What is up, everybody? Mark on the mic, and joined today by our very special guest, Mr. Clay Hayes. You can check him out on YouTube. Under Clay Hayes Hunter. Your YouTube channel is absolutely phenomenal, Clay. You're doing all sorts of hunting stuff and survival stuff and bushcraft. I'll also point out, winner of Season 8 Alone. I feel like that's a title that just always needs mentioning. And this is this episode is one of our hunt recaps, and one that I'm incredibly excited about because you've essentially spent a month in Alaska, one of the wildest places on earth, doing some pretty wild things. We did zero pre-podcasting, which is usually I ask too many questions because I'm so curious on the front end. I have no idea how your trip went, what you did. Well, I got a little bit of idea because I watched your first video. But man, let's jump into this. When did you leave? When did you get back? And what's the in between, man? What did you do for a month in Alaska? My Lord, surviving for a week in Alaska is a pretty big feat, right? Well, that's surviving is no stranger to you. But man, tell us about your trip. I just can't wait to hear about it.
All right. Well, I flew out of Idaho on September 2nd and came back October 1st when we got back into Idaho. So yeah, we were up there for pretty much the entire month of September. And started off, we flew into Anchorage. I met up with a couple of guys up there, and so our plane got into Anchorage at like 2 p.m. and then by probably 6 p.m. we were fishing on Prince William Sound, catching salmon. So that's a pretty good deal. So there was no breather. You just hopped threw your stuff on a boat and away we went. And then just slept on the boat that night and caught a bunch of rockfish, caught a bunch of salmon. Got back in and spent the night, and then the next morning we were on a plane to the village where we were meeting up with my friend Chevy Roach, who we spent a bunch of time with. That's where the majority of the trip was spent, in a little remote village in Southwest Interior.
Okay, gotcha. So you went from saltwater on the coast, and that first video that I watched was super cool. I mean, like you said, you caught some rockfish, you caught a kind of a incoming pink salmon, and did a little catch and cook action. I love that, that coastal region of the state, but it sounds like so you bounced to the interior right after that, huh?
Yeah. So some of your listeners might know who Chevy is. He's got a YouTube channel, and then also was on the Life Below Zero show. Super good dude. Lived in Alaska his whole life, and he's among other things, a transporter up there. So he takes folks out, drops them off so that they can do their hunts. Hunted with Chevy a lot, and just did a lot of just helping out, just helping him work on some projects that he has been meaning to do for a while. And so, one of my objectives going up there for that long was to get as many video projects done as I could. So one of those projects, or one of those videos that's going to be coming out of that trip, is just like what's it like to live in a remote village in Alaska. He's got an off-grid cabin up there, and just, we built a smokehouse. I helped him upgrade his solar system, did some bow building with some of the local kids, and then we did some hunting with Chevy. So Chevy's, he's a lifelong Alaskan, and for a lot of those guys, hunting it's not something that it's not like, it's just part of the job. You go out, you shoot a moose, you butcher the moose, you hang it in a smokehouse, and then you're on to the next thing. It's just part of what you do to make a living up there. and he's always been a rifle hunter because that's just the most efficient thing, you know. And so last couple of years, he's actually gotten into traditional bow hunting, and we talked about this a little bit on last year's video, but he, from his perspective, it brings a lot of that the fun back into it. It makes it not just a job. It brings the hunt back into it. And we talked a lot about that, and did a lot of bow hunting with him while we were up there, and called in some really nice bulls.
That is so cool. And like you said, I mean, you know, living in Alaska and like you're saying, remote Alaska. I mean, that is a different way of life. Alaska tough is a real thing. There's just the next level of self sufficiency, ingenuity, being able to navigate, very serious situations in the moment with what you have, and part of those things that you need to navigate, like I said, is food, and it's less definitely less of a recreational mindset. Like, it's not like the meat that you might get as a luxury; it's a necessity, right? So I think what you're saying there definitely is interesting to point out. But it's really cool to hear you say that. It went from almost like I guess what in some ways from a mindset perspective of how mundane it might be for us to go to the grocery store. It's kind of a chore that you do that week. Obviously going and getting a moose is a little bit of a different chore. Well, if you get one down, it's still a chore. But it's cool that he was interested in putting some of those elements back into it, though, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and it's when you get out into these places, there's no roads in or out of this village. Um, there's no supermarket, there's no fast food restaurant. It's like a tiny little place, and so you mentioned self sufficiency and ingenuity. It's like some of the projects I was working on, you had to use what you had there. Whatever you can find, you got to use it because you're not going to run down to Ace Hardware and grab some bolts. You just got to use what you got. Um, and it's the same with the moose hunting. And he kind of described it that way. It's just like we're going to the grocery store.
Wow, wow. What can you talk about some of those projects? I don't want to, I guess, spoiler alert, all the awesome videos that you have coming out. I mean, you went over them, but like, building the smoke shack, like how big of a shack was it? Like, what does his need look like? Are there salmon in the area that he still has access to that you can smoke, or was that more for moose meat and things like that? Like, what was the purpose of the smoke shack?
Yeah, just all above. So Chevy's got a little small cabin. He's got a nice cabin where he lives with his family, and but then he's got another smaller cabin, kind of like a hunting cabin. About probably 15 miles out of town there. And so we built the smokehouse there because that's where they do most of their fishing out of. And they'll set nets, as part of their subsistence. I don't know how the state manages that, or the feds, or whoever manages all that stuff, but they can set nets for silver salmon. They catch pike and whitefish, and they've been meaning to build a smokehouse at this place because you catch the fish and you don't have to transport them. It goes right into the cutting, putting them into the smokehouse, getting them drying, and then they'll a lot of that stuff they'll can or jar, to preserve it for the rest of the year. And then the same with the moose meat. They'll quarter moose up, hang in the smokehouse, and just kind of keep it there, let it age for a little bit before they process it further. But um, he's got a little sawmill, and we milled up some lumber. They use it all spruce up there, so milled up some lumber, transported that down to the site, and then just kind of built a really cool rustic looking. I mean, it's almost the size of a cabin. It's probably 8 by 10, or 12 or 10 by 12 or something like that. It's a pretty good size little deal.
The old little bit bigger than my little Chief smoker. Then this is
A little bit.
this is the walk-in variety.
Yeah, this is the walk-in variety of a little Chief.
Man, that is so cool. And I imagine at the remote cabin, no electricity, or was there?
No, well, everything that they've got up there. So even their main family place in town is it's off grid, but it's got it's on a solar system, and that's one of the things that we worked on up there. He had got some solar panels and new batteries from a company that's based out of Alaska, and I can't recall the name of the company that makes those things, but that was one of the things that I was helping him with, was upgrading that system. But the small shack, the small cabin is also on a solar system, and they've got if they have a high power demand, they've got a little backup generator that they're using. But you don't really use a lot of power out there other than kicking on some lights every now and then. Everything's run on propane or no refrigerator, but it's cool enough. You don't, at that time of year, you don't need a refrigerator. You can just catch a fish and gut it and hang it outside or hang it in the smokehouse and be fine for a few days.
What were the temps like then?
It changed pretty dramatically. We were up there. I guess the lows when we first got there, early September. I don't know, probably mid 30s or so for the lows. And then by the time we left, it was getting down into the low 20s. So there was starting to get like some of the stiller water kind of in the eddies along the river was starting to get a little bit of skim ice on it when we took off.
Gotcha. What did the landscape, you were there for 30 days, and I guess what made me think of this, I hunted moose up there several years ago with a couple good buddies, and we got there about, I can't remember, it was early September, and we were there for about 9 or 10 days, something like that. But in that time frame, I watched all of the blueberry bushes go from just lush green to just this vibrant red color, and it was crazy. Like I can see it in my pictures throughout the week, and I just noticed it throughout the week. Watching the landscape change, watching the aspens turn, things like that. What did you notice in that time frame?
Same type of deal. I mean, so this area is very, very flat. There's a little bit of topography. There's a little bit of hills, and they're all covered with spruce and birch. But between those hills and the vast majority of the landscape is I wouldn't even call it tundra. I mean, it's just bog. So you have the river, and then right adjacent to the river is the only high ground, and there's like these and it's not very big. It's maybe at the widest you might have 50 yards from the riverbank inland. That's relatively high ground. You every now and then you might get 100 yards of high ground, but then beyond that it's all just it's almost like floating moss and vegetate. Like you could not physically backpack a quarter across that stuff, or you'd have to sled it out. You got to put it in a sled and slide it if you had to get anything out of there. And so most of the moose are like right in that river corridor. There's a lot of willows, a lot of like banded type willows. So all those river systems like that are very dynamic, and so over time, over a long time, thousands of years, those rivers will change, and as they change, they'll leave oxbows, and they leave these like old riverbanks, which are these kind of high ridges where the river's edge used to be, and so you'll have these bands of relatively higher ground, and a lot of times those get covered with willows, and those will have moose in them too. But when you get up, especially if you're flying in and out of there, you'll look across those areas, and there's just thousands and thousands and thousands of acres of just bog. There's nothing out there but birds, but swans and geese. The moose don't really go out there.
Okay, gotcha. I was going to ask if I mean, it seems like the same thing that would, granted they got, 4-wheel drive, but you get in that stuff and you just sink into it. I imagine, even though they're on stilts, they would punch right through. Yeah.
Yeah, they, they'll some of that stuff they'll traverse, and again, keep in mind that I have 2 years of moose hunting experience, but so, but you can look at when you get up in the air, you can see trails, and there's just no trails through that stuff. So it seems to me like they just don't use those, they call them flats up there. That stuff that's just way out in the middle of those places. You just don't find them out there.
Yeah, you wonder, you look at that stuff in country that big, that remote, that really just in some ways impassable. And it's like, you wonder if there's ever been a person out there. Maybe not.
Well, they travel it in the wintertime. So when everything freezes over, it gets snow covered, they take their snow machines pretty much everywhere. But as far as this time of year, pre-freeze up, it's I mean, you'd have to have an airboat to get out there, I think.
Gotcha. Well, let's dive into some of the hunting. And it sounds like you guys did some moose hunting. Let's talk about that, and then I guess any other hunting that you may have done throughout the trip. But I mean, you kind of teased it up there, Clay. I mean, you guys called in some big bulls, huh?
Yeah, so I did a hunt of my own, which is we were out for 11 days. So I took one of Chevy's boats and went way up the river. So the area that Chevy can hunt, he can hunt the native ground there. He lives in the village. He's so he can hunt a different area, and there's just less pressure on the moose. So it's easier to find legal bulls, and well, he doesn't even. I mean, it doesn't matter to them. They can shoot whatever they want, as far they don't have like an antler restrictions or anything like that. But for me, I had to. I was in an over the counter unit, and you got a 50-inch minimum or 4 brow tine rules in that area. So they have to be bigger than 50 inches or 4 brow tines on one side. And like I said, we were out for 11 days. The first evening that we were out, we called in, maybe it was the second evening, one or the other. Anyway, called in this bull, and he was probably 40 inches, and he came right by we were kind of tucked in this little cove in the willows, real thick country. And we were in there grunting and raking and carrying on. And I was actually, to get a perspective on this landscape, like I was just finding birch trees to climb up, so you can kind of see what's out there. You can hear a lot better too when you get up in those trees. And I was like 30 feet up a birch tree, and I hear a branch snap, and it's like close, like 50 yards. I was like, oh. So I come scampering.
I need to get out of this tree.
I need to get down where my bow is. Yeah. At the base of the tree. So I come crashing down this tree, grab my bow, and get ready. And I mean, it wasn't 2 minutes later, and this bull comes walking by at 5 yards. And I could see pretty immediately that he just wasn't going to meet. Like, I didn't have 4 brow tines, wasn't wide enough. And I had my new intern River was with me, and I turned to him and said, "He's just too small." He walked by at 5 yards broadside, just, I mean, perfect as it could be. I mean, I could have killed him easy. And so after I figured he wasn't legal, we just started trying to get footage of him, and he was just, moose are just, when you grow up hunting whitetails and you spend a lot of time hunting elk, you just, they, how they just don't tolerate, if they see you, they smell you, they hear your voice or whatever, they're gone. Well, moose in the rut, when they're rutted out, man, they just are oblivious. If you kind of move like a moose and you sound like a moose, to them, you're a damn moose. And so, I was just kind of swaying a little bit, holding my arms up like antlers, grunting at him a little bit, and he just didn't give a damn. And he's standing there. We walked up to him. Hell, he's 5 yards away, just standing there looking at us. And got some really good footage of that bull that evening. And we actually ended up calling that bull in again about a week later, that same bull, and he was even more out of his mind. Like, we called him in, and like I was drawing. I put a blunt tipped arrow on just in case I screwed up and released, but um, I was drawing my bow. Like anytime I get a chance to draw on an animal that I'm not going to shoot, I take it just so that I can work that, like go through that process of, picking a spot and, drawing the bow, like go through the entire shot process without actually dropping the string. And so I was doing that. We got some good photos. Um, and he was downwind. He was walking and he did not care one bit. I mean, I know he smelled us, and I was walking around in the open, and so he goes off. This is the week after, the second time we called him. He goes off, and we sit there for a little bit. We probably sit there for another hour calling, and then decide, all right, we're going to go back to the boat and try a different spot. Well, on the way back to the boat, I ran into this bull again, like not even trying. I was just walking to the boat, and he was just standing there. And I look up, and he's standing there at 10 yards. I'm like, well, hell, we'll just kind of screw with him a little bit and see what we can get out of this thing. So I got I got up, I walked up to him, probably 5 yards, and was raking a tree and grunting a little bit, and I made sure that I had something to get behind, because when they get like that, they can get pretty aggressive. But I walked up there and grabbed a tree and shook it, and man, he came to us like he was wanting to get us. And and I've got all this on a GoPro on my head, but that was pretty interesting.
Man, they are such big animals, and to hear you describe his mindset, demeanor, just being fully rutted up, like you said, just like he's kind of lost his mind.
Oh, it, it is. I mean, it's so different than any other animal I've ever hunted. I mean, there's no way that you're going to get a bull elk to do that. Not that I've ever seen anyway. Maybe somebody has experience with them doing stuff like that, but um, they keep a little bit of sense about them. But moose, man, when they get all rutted up, like there was probably the best example of this. We called in another bull that was probably about 45 inches, and he was coming. We were sitting on this like point of birch and willow, and we were surrounded by um, just this big grass flat. And this bull was coming right down just a real thin line of trees coming to us where we had been calling just previously. And he was walking by and didn't know we were there. And I let him get almost almost by me, and he was probably, I don't know, 20 yards out or so. And you can see, like, we've got some video on this, and he doesn't know we're there. He's just walking, and I grunted at him, and I had a shoulder blade, like a moose shoulder blade I was using to rake with. Put this shoulder blade up and kind of started swaying, like when those bulls get get near each other, they start swaying their heads back and forth. And when I did that, when I grunted at him and started swaying like that, he looked at me, and you can see his attitude change. I mean, 180 degrees. He laid his ears back, his eyes rolled back in his head. He started slobbering. I mean, just like drool coming out of his mouth, and he started swaying and grunting at me. And it's just, I mean, I have no cover. I'm just out in the wide open
Well, I was
like
just
that.
about to ask. Certainly, you had something between you and him again at this point, but it sounds like no.
Well, no, I was very close. I made sure that I had something nearby that I could get behind. But, um, you know, some people might hear me talk about this and say those things and, think that it's irresponsible or dumb to do something like that. But hell, I mean, they don't, th- I've been around big animals like that my whole life. I grew up raising bison. I've caught hundreds of feral hogs. It's just, I know what I can get away with and what I can't, and how to handle those types of situations. So don't try that at home, kids.
Well, and along with that, how often do you get a chance to interact with an animal like a bull moose at that distance, that time of year, and really as a hunter or even just somebody who's curious, learn what they do, learn how they react, learn, oh, when I do this, they do that. I mean, obviously in this situation, it's like, oh, I did this and he did that. Like, all right, maybe I better scoot over here. But you're just you're not gonna know unless you do those things, and that's all information that you can use down the road when it is a 50-inch bull or a brow
Oh yeah.
tine bull.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other one of the really interesting things that I learned this year, and again, like I said, this is only my second year hunting moose, but their attitude. We got out there on the 10th, I think, or the 9th, and we hunted through the 20th, and then after that we started hunting with Chevy, so we hunted all the way. They can hunt, I think, till the end of the month. So we hunted, basically from the 10th through the 29th, and you could see, there was a definite time period when you could do that, when you could get away with that, and that seemed to be from the 10th through the 15th or 16th or so. But then after that, it seemed like they wouldn't let you do that. They wouldn't, if you showed yourself, even if you kind of grunted at them and swayed and did all that whole show for them, they just wouldn't. They'd take off. You know, and so I don't know if it was like that everywhere or if that's just what I experienced, but um, it seemed like once they started getting with the cows, that tactic no longer would work.
Were
So maybe
they
there's somebody out there that's got more experience that could give us some more information on that. But that's what I saw anyway.
so did it seem like they were like they'd almost snapped out of that trance-like state a little bit, and like even though they were with the cows and still rutting, they kind of entered a different mindset where they were more aware with those cows and more, or
It seemed like it. Yeah, it seemed like they just weren't as dumb as they were, you know, in that early part of the rut.
huh, interesting. So then I take it you didn't get a bull on your hunt in the area where you could hunt, and then you transitioned, you started hunting with Chevy. How did that go then?
Yeah. So we ended up calling up. we called in. I think we called in 6 bulls on my hunt and saw some nice. We saw 2 and maybe 4. Could have been it could have been the same 2 bulls that we saw that were definitely legal. Like you could see them and like, oh yeah, like no doubt about it. Could have killed them with a rifle, but I'm out there hunting with my stick bow. I need to be within, oh, I don't know, 20 yards, 30 yards maybe.
Which bow did you bring then?
Oh, it was just one that I'd made. I think I did a video on making it. I made a 2-piece bow so I could stick it in a case. um, and actually gave it to somebody when I was up there, so I had to bring it back. Um, but then we started hunting with Chevy and was able to hunt the native ground. And man, we so I did a video hunting with Chevy last year, bow hunting with Chevy, and we called in. I don't know. I don't know how wide this bull. He had to have been close to 70 inches, and called him up to within 5 yards of Chevy, and he just, that was his first year bow hunting. He didn't really know, how to set up in relation to the animal so that they pass and you get a shot. And he ended up setting up, kind of like right behind a right behind a willow, and this bull walked up to the willow, and he thought this bull was going to start raking and tearing the hell out of this willow. So he actually backed away, like, because he didn't want to be that close to him. And when he made that movement, the bull stopped and kind of locked in on him, and he didn't end up getting a shot at that one. And then we'd made another stalk on another huge bull in a big flat. He was bedded out there, real windy day, and we ended up stalking up to within, I think, 10 yards of this bull. He was probably 65 inches. And again, so the bull stood up and ran to about 40 yards, stopped and looked back, and that's just too far of a shot. So we didn't end up getting any shots last year. And this year we got some great footage, called in some really nice bulls, didn't get a shot with the bow. And then last day broke out the rifle.
The great equalizer.
Yeah. So, and we talked about that. It's like bow hunting is it's awesome. You get to experience things that you would never typically get to experience with a rifle. I mean, being that close to something like that, and being put in those situations. But at the end of the day, moose is what they eat. You got to put meat in the freezer.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about earlier, it's like, on a pretty big level, you're not really messing around up there. Like getting a moose is important / critical for your, like, it's a big deal if you need to get a moose for the year. That's a big deal. But it's also cool that he was able to put in that time with the bow, have those incredible, crazy experiences, and then it sounds like maybe still get a bull for the year.
Yeah. So we ended up, last day, we called in a bull early, but there was too much brush in the way. Couldn't get a shot at him. Went to another little location, stepped up on the bank, and then there's like a 30-incher just standing right there. Boom, hits the ground. Perfect. Easy pack to the boat. So we,
How far was the shot on the 30-inch bull?
Oh, I don't know. It was probably 80 yards.
Okay,
something
gotcha.
like that.
Gotcha. I was checking to make sure it wasn't like, you finally put down the bow and there he is standing at 20 yards over the bank.
No, they, so the area that that he actually shot this bull was pretty close to the village, and so these a lot of the locals there hunt there, so they're a little bit more skittish than they would be, in other places that he could hunt. But it would have been tough to get a bull with a bow um, in that area, just because they've been called to a lot. And people hunt with rifles pretty regular. Um, but he ended up he shot that little bull, hit the ground, and then Chevy took the boat to get some sleds for for packing the meat out, and it was probably only 150 yards to the boat. And so I got the opportunity. The reason I talk about all it is I got the opportunity to skin and quarter a moose by myself, which is, I've done bull elk, I've done a lot of whitetail and stuff like that, but man, a, a moose is a quite a chore.
It is a different animal, literally. And earlier you're like, oh, and so he shoots this little bull, and it's like in the grand scheme of antlers, and I imagine body size. You think, oh, 30-inch bull, like that, it's not like that big a moose. It is still an incredibly large animal. So maybe describe. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, we were in an 80 bull unit when I went. We knocked down a handful of bulls, and each time, just the scale and the size is just like you can't even fathom it when you're looking at the darn thing. And what was that? What was that like for you? Was that the first time you've stood over a Yukon bull moose, or have you done that
No,
before?
no, Chevy shot one last year on what they call a proxy tag, so they can hunt for any. I think, I don't quote me on this, but I think the rules say that anyone over 65 or is unable to hunt for themselves can designate someone else to, as their hunter. And so he shot again another. He probably, I don't know, 40 inch bull last year. But just as an example of the size on these things, when you take a shoulder off, front shoulder, with the leg still attached, I'm 6 foot tall, and if I put the hoof on the ground, that the top of the shoulder is damn near as tall as I am. I mean, they're just, and that's not even those aren't even big bulls. There's a big difference in the body size of a big 65, 70 inch bull and, one of those littler guys. But Chevy was saying the yield off of that bull for boned out meat would be over 600 pounds
So
of
awesome.
boned out meat. That's crazy.
Well, and if you've never had the opportunity to try moose meat, boy, it is some of the best stuff going, in my opinion.
I agree. I mean, I've eaten all kind of wild game from all over. And as far as red meat goes, moose is has to be the best.
I'd agree with that. Well, talk us through a little bit. I mean, I how'd you get this thing broke down by yourself?
Well, I so
They're
I did it.
huge.
They are huge. I mean, I did it basically same way that I would do a bull elk. Other than they like to so you can't bone out, anything out. It's all got to stay on the bone. So I skinned half of it through the hide to the side, the top half of the hide to the side. Took off the front shoulder and the hind quarter, and was able to get them hung up in a tree. But you can't, like, even with a bull elk, you can kind of manage a hind quarter and like lay it across your lap while you finish those final pieces of, final cuts to get it separated from the hip socket and all that stuff. But I mean, I'm not big enough to do that. I only weigh 155 pounds, so I'm not big enough to manhandle that thing. And so I had to, like, keep it on. It's hard to describe what I was having to do, but I was having to, like, keep it on the rib cage of the moose and kind of just move it around, um, without picking it up and getting it making the final cuts. And once I got it detached, then I could pick it up. And I actually kind of a probably going to make the blooper reel, but I picked this thing up and put it on my shoulder, this hind quarter, and there was a big grass tussock behind my foot. And I mean, I did a somersault backwards with this freaking 150-pound moose quarter on my shoulder, but luckily was able to get it recovered without wallering it around in the dirt too much.
Oh my
But
gosh.
got those things hung up in a we found a willow that was stout enough, pretty close by, and then just I had a little pack saw in my pack and cut the ribs off, got those hung up, and then we just took the whole back out, like the whole saddle with back straps and everything intact, and took that out. And then by that time, Chevy had gotten back, and he had helped me kind of with the other half. We got him rolled over, got the other quarters taken off, and away we went.
Do the back straps have to stay on the bone too?
No,
Okay.
they didn't, but I didn't know, I knew he does things differently than I would do, and I didn't know what he wanted. And so I just left him in there. If it was me, if it was my moose, I would have taken him out and been done with it. But like I said, I didn't really know what he wanted. So I just processed it as minimally as I could, and still manage, still have pieces I can move around.
Gotcha. And when you're saying you hung these, giant quarters up in the, were you just kind of like setting them up there and kind of crotches where they'd fit, or were you actually like using paracord and hanging them, or
I had to get some help from my camera guy for that one. I had some paracord in my pack, so I just tied them up and put that paracord up through a crotch of one of the willows, and was able to lift them up high enough that we could get them so that they wouldn't touch the ground when they were hanging, just to kind of get some airflow around them, because there was nowhere to set them. I didn't have the foresight to get a tarp or anything like that, before Chevy took off, or otherwise I'd have just set them on a tarp.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Cause I imagine it's like, yeah, it's probably not going to be too long before he's back with the boats and the sleds. I guess long enough that you could, get a bull moose broke down, which, I mean, I'd have to think that had to take a couple hours at least. Yeah.
Yeah. It took a little while. I think he had it planned out that way, though.
Very smart. That's
he probably went back up to his house, had a cup of coffee. Yeah, those guys will be done by the time I get back.
Yeah, I might have to make a mental note. That's a good tactic. So you get this bull out. What next? Any other good adventure? Did you guys continue to hunt after that at all? Did you hunt different things after that? Did you do more fishing, more projects? What'd you guys end up doing?
Well, we did some fishing while we were up there. We did the river was pretty blown out. They'd had a lot of rain before we got there. And so the fishing was just not good, but we found one creek that was pretty clear and ended up catching some pikes. I caught a pike that was, I didn't measure him, but I know he was over 40 inches. I mean, he could have been 45, just a giant fish. So that was fun. So we got out when we got to our campsite. We set the tent up, stayed that night, and then the next day we were out hunting moose all day. Came back that evening, and I looked at the tent, and there was a hole in it. I was like, "What the hell why is there a hole in my tent?" And then I got to looking at it, and it was claw marks from a bear had ripped a hole in the tent.
Naturally.
Like, well, damn. So then, you got to think, well, I got to make sure there's nothing in the tent, that's going to draw. And I hung up a bear bag and all that stuff. But he he never caused us any trouble. We were seeing sign all over the place, but as far as never saw the bear. So that was good. Didn't see any grizzly sign, just black bear sign,
Okay.
and had an unidentified maker of what sounded like a deep cow elk to me, like a meow meow, kind of like a deeper toned mew, and I didn't know what it was. And so I recorded it, and then, got it kind of a crappy recording because it was raining on the tent and you can kind of barely hear it, but got back to some cell signal where I could look it up, and it was a calf moose making that mewing sound.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that was kind of cool.
That is cool. I was going to go with Squatch, but
Yeah, it could. I didn't look up squatch calls, so maybe they sound similar. I don't know.
But man, that is super neat. I mean, what a cool adventure. What I mean, that's just a long time to be up there.
It is. I was ready. I was ready to come home, see the fam, throw the ball for the dog, and all that fun stuff, and get ready for the next adventure. So it's our deer season doesn't start here or the rifle season doesn't start till October 10th. So we got a little bit of a lull between September and the opener of deer season, but I'm not sure when pheasant opens here. I have to check on that. But
maybe I'll get out a bit earlier than I think I would have. We might have to go hunting later today. I don't know.
But so our upland season for the most part is open. I think is we've got forest grouse and all that stuff that's open, and then we'll do some hunting with my youngest son. We actually got out before, so we left September 2nd. Our archery deer season opened August 30th, and we've been watching. There's 3 nice muley bucks that are right by the house, and one of them is really nice. And my son has never killed a deer with his bow, and so we were trying to get him on one of these bucks, and he's got a self bow, and he shoots it pretty well, but he needs to be 15 yards and under. And so these bucks were bedding under a bush that was looked like it was very close to a big rock outcropping on the edge of this farm field. And I don't know how to score mule deer. Like I can look at a whitetail and kind of give you a pretty good estimate of what they score, but a mule deer, I'm not as well schooled. But I would say the biggest buck was, I don't know, he was probably 28 inches wide and probably that tall.
Wow.
Just a nice buck. And then there was another one with, he had like a 3-pronged G2, I guess you'd call it. And it had some other kick, just like a non-typical, really nice buck. And so we get the wind on these deer. They're bedded, and they're bedding under this bush every day. And we're like, this is doable. So we sneak up behind this rock, and the closest we can get to them is 27 yards.
Oh,
and
boy.
They're all bedded there. And so as I asked him, oh no, we did have one. When we got almost to the rocks, we had one that walked up to us, and I didn't know he was coming. He walked up to us and got to within 5 yards, but we weren't ready. I didn't know. I had no idea he was out there walking around. I thought they were all still bedded. But anyway, he takes off, and then the other ones are still bedded there. So we get to 27 yards, easy compound shot, and just too far for him. And I asked him, it's like, so, what do you want to do? You want to wait here and just see if maybe something stands up and comes this way, or do you want to back out and try to get around them? And so we decided to back out, try to get around them, and we made this big circuit around and started coming in from the backside. And if we had been able to get there, we would have been able to get to 5 yards of where they were bedded. But we got relatively close and had a switch in the wind, and they weren't there when we got there. But the rifle season opens here in just a few days, so we're going to see if we can relocate those deer and get on them with the rifle. If he wants to. I haven't even talked to him about it. Maybe he'll want to keep after him with his bow. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, either way sounds super exciting. I mean, what a cool experience, and golly, so close, I mean,
Yeah.
I can identify with being within bow range of something and not being ready, because it happened to me with a bull elk last week when I was looking left, and then when I looked right, he was right there at 40 yards looking at me through a bush, and then it just came unglued and was pretty much over before it started. But I mean, so cool for him. I mean that's a big deal, that just to, I mean, yeah, it didn't work out, but he was within 5 yards of a mule deer buck. Like, that's not easy to do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was fun. And I think we got some decent footage of that. And so hopefully we'll be able to get another video out on that hunt for his channel.
What's his channel?
If you just looked up Finn Hayes, FenHayes, you'd find it. He's got a few. He's got his elk hunt on there from last year, which was a cool hunt. It was an early season rifle hunt. He shot a cow down in this nasty, steep star thistle covered canyon, and
Yuck.
he's never had to pack anything, because he's never been big enough to carry a pack that actually fits him. But he's big enough now. We got Kifaru, I don't know, mini keg maybe. Anyway, we found a pack that would fit him, like that has a frame and everything. And so we got down there, and I put probably, I don't know what he would weigh. He probably weighs 115, maybe something like that. And I put about 30 pounds in his pack, and he put that thing on, and he had his trekking pole. He's like, this is nothing, He walks, and we're on flat ground at this point. And, he walks about 100 yards. I don't know what y'all talking about. This is easy. Well, then we started uphill, and it was hot. It's August, so it's probably at that time, it was probably 85 degrees, and the sun's shining on you. And star thistle is, I don't know if you've ever had to walk through that stuff, but it is nasty, and it's got these big long spines on it, and it's about 4 feet tall, and he ain't much taller. And so I got the reason the video, I like the video, is it shows him going through this like mental, emotional struggle as he's having to pack out this elk. And like, there's some tears involved in it. And he gets to the point where he just like, he wants to quit, but he doesn't, and it was a good lesson for him, to come up against something that is very difficult, where you want to quit, but you can't, and just pushes through it. And finally, we get to the top and unload the elk and everything. And, he's glad that he did it. But that was a good one.
That's a really good one, and a good reminder that some of our best life lessons don't happen in the classroom. That's for sure.
That's right. Most of them, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, that is cool. Well, I might have to check that out. That sounds like a good video. I mean, as you're talking through that, not necessarily with hunting, but I think of similar things with my girls where they've those moments where they've overcome something or worked hard and pushed through. And man, it's cool to see. I mean, for me, it's emotional to watch them do something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he did a good job. I mean, he didn't, like I said, he pushed through and did what needed to be done.
I bet those elk steaks tasted even better after that.
Oh, I guarantee they did.
Well,
Make you appreciate it.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Well, awesome, Clay. Well, man, I appreciate you sharing your Alaska story and a few extras because those were great as well. Anything else you got going on that worth mentioning that people can keep their eyes open for?
Well, yeah. So we'll have some. I'll have a video from my hunt, and even though I didn't put my tag on a bull, we had some amazing. I mean, we got some fantastic footage. Really cool encounters. So we'll have that. We'll have the kind of the month in the rural Alaska video coming out. We'll have Chevy's hunt coming out, and then we'll do. So last year we ended up going to South Dakota for the pheasant opener, and didn't end up putting out a video on that, but we should have one on this year's hunt. We're gonna head back over there, and supposedly what I've been hearing is they had a good hatch and there's tons of birds. So that should be pretty cool. And then we're doing our late flintlock muzzleloader cow elk hunt again this year. And then in December, I'm going to try something I've never tried before. I'm going to attempt to take a deer with complete Stone Age equipment. So we're talking like I'm going to make a bow with rocks, and then I'm gonna put a rock on the end of an arrow, and I'm gonna shoot a deer with it. That's the theory, anyway. That's the goal. I made one bow with nothing but stone tools, but I want to make another one. I want to make one that's a little bit better. I learned a lot on the last one, but I need to get close. And I think if the weather's right on this hunt, it's a very good hunt. You just have to have that the right weather to push the deer to where they need to be. But if you get it, man, it is there's a pile of deer, and so I'm going to try to do it from the ground. Probably need to get 5 yards from one, and put that stone tip between some ribs.
Well, I didn't think that you could make it harder than you already do, Clay, but it sounds like you've one-upped yourself. And frankly, if you accomplish this, I don't know what the next step would be to make it harder other than, I guess, bare hands. But tune in when I grapple a deer.
We might have to try that with a hog.
But man, super cool stuff. Folks out there, if you haven't checked out Clay's channel, it is phenomenal. Great hunting videos, great, survival type videos, bushcraft, outdoor skills. I mean, you've got it all. Whether you hunt or not, it is incredibly interesting stuff, useful stuff. A lot of things that, I kind of consider to be like lost arts, Clay, and things that we need to remember and carry on. So I appreciate you carrying that torch because as much as I love your videos, I also love my modern conveniences, including rifles. But man, it's super cool stuff. So, I mean, I could spend hours on your channel already. It looks like you have some incredible, exciting stuff coming up, and I can't wait to watch that as well. So, yeah, thank you for sharing your story with us, and thanks everybody for listening. Like I said, check out Clay's channel. Check out Finn's channel. I think your wife has a channel as well. Yeah, Clay?
Yeah. Liz Hay, or I think it's Life Like Lizzie. But anyway, she shows you how to make how to can deer meat, and just so you can put it on the shelf and be there 20 years from now if you want to leave it there that long. But all sorts of stuff like that, gardening and self-sufficiency type stuff. So when the apocalypse comes, you'll be prepared for it.
Awesome. Well, after you're done watching or listening to this, then you can shoot on over to the Clay Hayes family network of YouTube channels. And I think you'll have your hands full in the next couple months of all the content that you'd ever want to watch. So thanks again, Clay. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Until next time, we'll catch you on the next one. Happy hunting and shooting. Bye.